Hello, happy Monday. This is the beginning of the week, and every Monday, before or right around noon, I plan to give you a few pointers every week. So be sure that you check your Blackboard announcements. Actually, you should check them regularly anyway, just in case something comes up administratively. That's where I'll let you know. I'll try to also send you an email. Um, I am going to go into the to the Pearson Ravel and into the course. And this first week, I just want you to be aware that um, if you have a small screen, you may miss the fact that whoops, here we go. That when you're looking at the assignments for this week, coming week, everything's due on September 30th. You scroll down, there's not, after the chapter quiz, generally speaking, the quiz sort of ends the chapter unless there's an appendix. Usually there's not an appendix, but since you know you may be a little bit rusty on graphing, this course uses graphs. Economists love to use graphs, and so there's an appendix to this chapter. My fear is that on a small screen, I again highly recommend, as stated on the syllabus, that you use a laptop or a desktop computer. Although there is an app for the phone, you can do a lot of this stuff on the phone, but I've noticed that it's kind of hard to see everything on a phone. So anyway, this is this week. You have assigned, and everything's open. Everything is open until September 30th. When you go in to take this quiz, I may have led you to believe, or maybe I should say that students have, I know, once they've started the quiz, it shows you got questions not attempted. When you start to attempt these questions, you can't, as it says, you have one try per question. You can't skip or go back to any question. Okay, so what that means is basically when you sit down to take this quiz, you should basically be ready to go through every question, because I have found that students have contacted me saying that they usually are able to, of course you can't go back to a question that you were already working on. So once you go in and start a question, you have the ability, I thought, and students have thought, that you can do this, but if you get timed out of the quiz, or if you go out and try to come back in some cases it's not working. And so my advice to you is that you should sit down and take the quiz. You should clear out at least 15 questions. Is not that much, but you should take this very seriously, because I would say once you start, don't go out and try to come back in, even though the system, I think, is designed to let you do that, because if you go back in, it'll show you the ones you haven't attempted and let you finish those. But I have had 2 or 3 students contact me saying that they left the quiz and tried to get back in and they couldn't get back in, and they could see that they had questions that were not attempted, but they were not able to get back in, and this is before the deadline. So that is a real problem, because I cannot go in and reset these quizzes. So I can tell you this: I can let you, I can drop the lowest 2 quizzes for all the quizzes. Now, because the concept checks and practice quizzes that occasionally are at the end of sections that I think are very important, and of course the homework at the end, right? You have these homework checks. All of that is open all week, and you can redo those until you get them right. I think that maybe for some of the problems on the concept checks, you only get 3 tries. But but I'm saying this is a very forgiving system when it comes to concept checks, practice quizzes, and at the end of each section, if they are there, and the homework, which is always there for the chapter. You can redo those, right? And you can get lots of question help on those. You can also get question helps on these. But the quizzes, I'm saying the quizzes, once you start that quiz, my advice is do not think about leaving that quiz and trying to come back in, because some people are reporting that they are not able to get back in and finish questions that they haven't attempted. I've tried to make these quizzes fairly short for that reason. I've shortened them up. There's not a lot of questions, and I would not leave the computer once I start these quizzes. Fine with the homework and the concept checks, you can always go back in and finish up what you started as long as you're before the deadline. But these quizzes, since I cannot reset these quizzes, these are hard deadlines, and administratively, I have no power to reset a quiz for you, to change a score for you, except manually once I download the spreadsheet. But and so you should think of this as a high stakes quiz, just like you were sitting down in a class. There's no, I can't, you're sitting down and you're taking it. It's a high stakes quiz. So that means that you've only got, as it says here, you have like 1 try per question. You can't skip or go back to any question. And I am saying that once you start this quiz, if you're working too long on a question, it will actually come in and ask you if you're still there, if you're still taking the quiz. And if you don't respond, it's going to boot you out. And in some cases, students haven't been able to get back in and even try the ones that they hadn't attempted yet. So my advice, I strongly recommend, in fact, I would say always, once you start this quiz, you need to clear away a space of time. I can't imagine it would take you more than an hour on any one of these, but I think as long as you're sitting at the computer, it's going to ask you if you're taking an inordinately long amount of time trying to figure out a question. It's going to ask you if you're still there, and you need to respond, yes, I'm still trying to figure this one out. I'm not aware of a time limit on the quiz in terms of the total time, as long as you respond to those prompts to ask you if you're still there and still working on the quiz. As long as you hit those prompts, it will give you more time on a question, I believe. Okay, so the main message here is that once you start these, you are going to sit down and take the whole quiz. That's the way you should plan it, okay? So every week I'll go in. There's not much to these questions in the first chapter, but so on some of the ones that are more demanding, I actually will go in and try to give you some pointers on some of these questions. So for that reason, every Monday before the upcoming Sunday, where it's due, I may give you some quiz help or some pointers on these that I think are particularly hard to do. Some of these questions are very challenging, I will say. And so, like I said, I will drop your lowest 2 scores on the quizzes. Everything else, unless you're having a really bad technical problem for a week or there's some kind of emergency, personal emergency, you should contact me about that. And I will work with people if there's a problem for the homework and the concept checks, but for the most part, you can start those out and work through those. You shouldn't let everything pile up toward the end of the week anyway, right? But for the quizzes, because these are unforgiving and they're just sit down and they're very challenging questions in many cases, I will drop your lowest 2 scores. And if there's any kind of a technical problem where you get thrown out, because I can't do anything about that within the system itself, there's no way I can let you retake this quiz. There's no way I can reset the quiz for you. So once you're doing this, realize that It's just like a sit-down class where you're sitting down, taking a quiz, and then after the due date, you will see the score for the quizzes, and then you will be able to go back and see what the right answer was. For obvious reasons, you can't do that until after the due date, of course, for these questions. And every student gets a different question on these. These are algorithmic, okay? But oftentimes I will, basically go through some of these. If a teacher puts too little weight on the grading scale of a certain part of the course, like readings outside the textbook, this is about people respond to incentives, right? If I don't count it or I de-emphasize that part of a course, teachers often wish that students came to class prepared to read, and right. But a teacher could design a grading system to motivate students to come to class prepared by I think this is increasing or something, right? The right answer here is increasing the grade weight assigned to being prepared. Oh my, students respond to incentives. Everyone responds to incentives in economics, of course, right? So anyway, let me close this out and show you that if you feel like you shouldn't be, too concerned. Many students, when they do these assignments, and don't forget, like I said, there's an appendix here. Don't just think that you're done with the quiz and that's the end of the chapter. Scroll down. There's also, this is concept checks, and there's no homework, but there's concept checks that you have to do. Again, there's points here. Points for homework, points for practice section, which is kind of like a practice quiz, but you get to redo it until you get full credit. Redo all this stuff until you get full credit. But the quiz is that high stakes things where you go in once, you sit down, you take it, you can't go backwards, go to each question and perform. Now, in terms of that weighting, students sometimes, because these are very challenging quizzes, if you are paying attention in the homework and reading through the chapter very carefully, you should do well. But if you don't, realize that in terms of your performance, I am basically going to let me see, course settings, here we go. Here's the weights, okay. 50% of the weight is on the homework, okay, as you're going at the end of the chapter. I want you to do the practice. If you neglect it, you won't get any points. The quiz is weighted 10%, so if you don't do all that well on the quiz, you can still do very well in the course. The reading with concepts checks is, again, weighted roughly 40% of your grade. So you want to take these things seriously as you go through these chapters. If you don't do all that great on the quiz, you'll see at the end of the week you get an overall percentage which only weights your quiz score by 10%. Still, if you don't perform well on the quizzes, it is enough so that it can pull your grade down, of course. But I don't want this to be one of these things where I did well on everything else, but the quizzes really got me in terms of a different kind of a score, because you can go in and redo these until you get them right. But the quiz is, you go in, you take it. You don't leave, and it is a high stakes quiz in the sense that some of these questions are very challenging, and you really have to have gone through the rest of all the stuff in this chapter and really paid attention to do well on these quizzes. Okay, so anyway, if you have questions, I usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have a number between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. on the syllabus where I will be, and I'm always in my office before my public economics class between 5 and 6 on campus. At FO 139, that's Faculty Office Building 139. It's the little building right in front of the Social and Behavioral Sciences building, sort of catty corner from the Administration building. Okay, so this is James Dolgiroff, JD, signing off. Thank you.